Hey everyone, welcome to Strange Stories, where we explore near-death experiences and supernatural stories from people who've had a glimpse of the other side. If you enjoy our content, please consider liking the video and subscribing to our channel. Without further ado, let's get to the story of the day. I went into early labor with my first child when I was 20 years old. After 4 trying days, I was given an episiotomy, during which I lost a lot of blood. It was decided to begin a blood transfusion 2 days after my daughter was born. I felt the urge to go to the restroom around 2 hours into the transfusion and dragged myself up, dragging the blood bag alongside me. I never felt so weak and floaty before or after this event. Moving took a lot of effort. I shuffled back from the toilet to the ward and laid down slowly and cautiously. Except for one other new mother who laid opposite me, the ward was deserted. I noticed myself shivering as I smiled at her. I'd always been cold, so I believed I just needed to warm up at the time. When I tried to sleep still for a bit, I discovered my entire body was shaking. The woman next to me inquired as to my well-being. I attempted to convince her that I was fine and that I was just cold, but my teeth were chattering and my jaw was too rigid to manage. Instead, I nodded, still puzzled as to why I was trembling. I reached for my buzzer to get an extra blanket from a midwife. As soon as she noticed me, she pressed a button behind me and I was surrounded in a matter of seconds. The transfusion was halted immediately. I noticed the woman across from me staring at me. I was strongly aware of her fear and the veil being drawn around her. I wanted to inquire what was going on, but I couldn't open my mouth to speak, and an oxygen mask was placed on my face practically instantly. I recalled struggling for air. I recall how hard my chest thumped. My thoughts were confused. My eyes were frenzied. And when I noticed my fingernails were going blue, I calmly thought to myself, "Oh, I'm dying." It was straightforward, with a tinge of oops. Internally, I attempted to remain cool. I was talking to myself in my head, thinking of my family and attempting to gain strength from them. I recall being upset and annoyed that they weren't with me and that I couldn't say goodbye to them. I attempted to keep my eyes open, but became really tired. My eyelids were heavy, so I rested them before getting up. I hovered briefly over my newborn kid, hoping she'd remember me, and then I was gone. I felt like I was shooting into a tunnel with no sights visible. It was dark, yet well lit. I wasn't alone. I felt a presence with me. I was tumbling forward and upward at an incredible rate. It was like wind, all over my body, within me. At the time, I compared it to being on a roller coaster, that rushing sensation. It was fantastic. I felt so light and liberated. Simultaneously, I experienced this fully and watched myself enjoy it from a safe distance. If I focus on the recollection, I can still see myself plummeting. This trip continued for a while until I became aware that I was in a different location, like a chamber with no walls, no roof, and no floor. I had full 360-degree eyesight and could see everything around me. There was darkness once more, but I was not terrified. I sensed a presence once more, as well as complete trust in this firm. For want of a better term, a movie began to play. It was big and black and white. I felt as if I were staring at a massive screen that encompassed every direction I turned. The movie was my entire life, from birth to death, every minute and every incident. I watched it again and again. It was at this point that I recognized time no longer appeared to me in the same way it did in my body. It seemed as if I'd been projected into a specific instant or dragged through time, backwards before forwards, to re-experience it. At this point, I witnessed the sexual assault I had undergone and buried as a small child, as well as out-of-body experiences I was having at the time and at night while resting in my bed. I remembered seeing myself floating out of my body. At this point, I also saw and remembered a guide who had been with me throughout my development. While watching or re-experiencing each occasion, I discovered that I could now experience each occurrence through the emotions of everyone who was present at the time. I watched my own blunders and learned from each reenactment. I saw myself as a child, bitten by a guinea pig and half launching it onto the sofa in shock. At the moment, I felt ashamed. Because I was terrified of the guinea pig, nobody judged me. I was merely asked what I'd learned. At this point, I felt relieved, comforted, and reassured I'd learned so much. What a great impact my seemingly insignificant activities made on a grand scale. How my decisions and actions affected the lives of countless people. The way my love spread like flames. How my mistreatment of others truly wounded and affected them. And how that anguish, anxiety, and confusion impacted the lives of others as well. I gained a deep gratitude for numerous things during the time I spent reminiscing. For one thing, the experience of life, people and souls who have affected my spirit in amazing ways, as well as the fragility of being human. My acquired wisdom seemed adequate, and we were on our way. We traveled into the lit darkness once more until I noticed a pinpoint of light in the distance. It was like seeing a memory when I saw it. I knew where I was going and was eager to get there. I'm not sure if I was pulling myself towards it or being drawn to it, but it was a need or a desire within me. We were getting closer and closer to this beam of light. It expanded in size and intensity in my vision. I had the sensation of flying. We jumped right in, and it was beyond words. It was an incredible feeling that I'll never forget. There was an immediate sense of calm, perfect, total peace within me. There was no pain, no fear, and no sense of shame. I felt totally accepted, completely whole and adored, beyond comprehension loved. I'm completely loved. I was loved like I'd never been before, loved with the purest love possible. I felt at home. I had the impression that I was familiar with this location, space, or being. It was breezy. It took over all available place in my 360-degree vision. It had no form that I can recall, which left me with further questions for a long time. But it was beautiful, and not at all dazzling. It felt as if I'd fused with the light. It absorbed me. I absorbed it, and we had totally merged. I learned a lot throughout these times. About our existence as humans, our planet, and what we as a species must do to fix its problems, and the healing that our planet and we as people require. I was speaking with the light, while also feeling within it and one with it. A conversation ensued, presumably by telepathy, and I was asked if I wanted to return. The actual truth of my spirit is that I was deeply offended by this suggestion. I was terrified by the concept and felt myself respond loudly within me. No. There was a brief delay, and I was perplexed as to why this was being asked of me. Do you want to go back? I asked myself again and again. I stated it once more. No. After another brief delay, I was shown the baby I had just delivered, resting in the crib next to my body. Much of the future was shown to me. Whether or not I returned to my body determined the outcome. There would be innumerable souls impacted by this love if I returned, and many that would not if I did not. I recall letting out what can only be described as a deep, profound sigh. A sigh of relief, a comprehension. I replied yes, immediately after viewing this and picturing my newborn daughter and her prospective future if I stayed. I asked for another moment, and I got it. I poured all of my love into my entire existence. It felt fantastic. I felt pure, light, entire, and loved, adored. Everything became clear to me during this moment. Creation, meaning and love, numbers, physics, and existence. I was shooting backwards. It was chilly and dark, and I was mourning the light before I even touched my body. I couldn't hold my baby for another 2 days. I was in and out of consciousness for 48 hours, while lying naked as the day I was born. I couldn't say anything. I just lay there quietly crying. I was in pain everywhere. I was stuck, constrained, and lonely. I quickly and profoundly missed the brightness, the affection. My spirit took longer to recuperate than my body, and that was a long time. For many years, I was miserable and had suicidal thoughts because the yearning to be home was so strong. For the longest time, I was perplexed. I was terrified. Being in a body was unpleasant, constraining and limiting for me. It still makes me very uneasy. However, I've learned to appreciate and be thankful for my life and breath. Many parts seem to fit into place in my mind when I was at my father's bedside when he died 7 years after my NDE. I urged myself to recover quickly. I remembered my mission at this time because of the sexual assault, the loss of my best friend, my father, and the terrible loss of light. I launched an online community called Bruised But Not Broken, and over the next 6 years, it grew into over 700,000 people who had endured sexual abuse, trauma, addiction, and loss, and we all work together to heal our wounds and be the best versions of ourselves we can be. I've also published 2 books since then. The first was about my sexual assault and healing, and the second was about my NDE and the time I spent with the light and my higher self. Without a doubt, my NDE was the most remarkable and transforming event of my life. I've never forgotten a single thing about it, and I doubt I ever will. It took time, but I let it shape me in the most beautiful way, and I try every day to live and love the way I was loved in those very holy moments.